Millions of years ago, the prosperous and fertile planet of Titania was home to a progressive agrarian civilization. The Titanians used advanced engineering and architectural techniques to construct ornate cities of stone between their small farming communities. They worshipped their fellow Titanian species, the fearsome Goras, as harvest gods of a sort, viewing their immense power as a planetary defensive measure. The Titanians constructed elaborate temples devoted to the Goras as centerpieces of each of their communities, where they would leave their harvests as offerings in exchange for protection. Eventually, an asteroid, possibly from the Meteo-asteroid belt, collided with Titania, reducing the vegetation-rich paradise into an arid desert, causing all native life forms, including both the Titanians and Goras, to go extinct. Around the same time, 6 ancient and powerful peace spirits called the Krazoa brought life to a planet that would one day be known as Dinosaur Planet. These 6 Krazoa constructed shrines all across the planet and ruled over it for a millennia from the comfort of their personal palace. At some point, this planet's second moon crashed onto the world's surface, resulting in the appearance of many new species of life forms, such as the mutant Sharpclaw. Later, the Krazoa created 4 artifacts full of dark matter called Spellstones to absorb the energy of Dinosaur Planet and hold it together, as it wasn't capable of being held together on its own. The Krazoa then had 2 temples constructed to house the Spellstones, one named the Ocean Force Point Temple to contain the 2 Water Spellstones, and the other named the Volcano Force Point Temple to house the 2 Fire Spellstones. Later still, a magical being called the Warpstone was created, presumably by the Krazoa, to teleport non-dinosaur individuals to various locations throughout Dinosaur Planet. The populace of the planet viewed the Warpstone as a deity of sorts, having offered him gifts up until 1,000 years ago. There was an ancient civilization on the planet of Aquas thousands of years ago, living on a series of islands above the waves there, carving out a way of life by harvesting sea life from the surrounding waters. They constructed great temples, while unbeknownst to them, a monstrous clamshell-like creature called Bakun grew in the depths of the global ocean of the planet. Bakun grew increasingly powerful over many years, learning to control the surrounding aquatic life forms, yet had become fiercely jealous of the then glorious ancient civilization. One day, Bakun asserted control over thousands of explosive starfish to melt the polar ice caps of Aquas before exploding. The ice caps indeed melted, flooding the planet. The ancient civilization sank beneath the waves along with their great temples and the islands they resided upon. Along with the annihilation of the ancient civilization, 97% of Aquas was covered in water. At some point, the legendary lost space tribe of Cornerus made their way to Venom, utilizing personalized technology such as, according to modern-day Corneria University scientists, the imposing Golomech. They eventually left the planet in search of a new home, though, far beyond the Lylat system, leaving their technology behind. It is unknown what became of this lost space tribe. About 70 years prior to the main events of the series, abundant mineral resources were discovered on the icy planet of Fichina beneath a dark layer nearly 700 square meters thick. Because of this, a manned research facility was established atop the planet's salt and perpetually snowy surface to mine and study said resources. The humanoid monkey Andross was born and raised on Corneria. His immeasurable brilliance showed from an early age in comparison to the other children around him, and he grew up to be an accomplished scientist as an adult, working at the Cornerian Defense Force's Science Institute. Being a man with a kind heart and the purest of intentions, Andross's research and results proved beneficial towards both Corneria and the Lylat system at large. This earned him the title of genius and garnered honor and respect from his peers. At some point, alongside his seedy subordinate Pigma Dengar, Andross shifted all his time and energy to researching biotechnology and space warps, despite the practice considered by most to be unethical. As Andross's ambitions led him to research and develop increasingly dangerous biotechnology, his friend and colleague within the Cornerian army, General Pepper, grew skeptical of his intentions, often coming to question the value of such creations. On Dinosaur Planet, a young Sharpclaw named Scales was orphaned at an early age. He grew up unusually tall and strong, with a disdain for authority, often acting as an overpowering bully to the other members of his tribe who rightfully feared him. Scales would go on to stage many challenges for rule over the Sharpclaw tribe, and finally becomes the youngest ever general at the age of 24. Back on Corneria, James McLeod, an ace pilot and avid adventurer, enlisted in the Cornerian army alongside his best friend Peppy Hare to protect the peaceful planet. Corneria, whose military was mostly limited to the homeworld, had always been a prime target for outside attack due to it being home to 85% of the Lylat system's population. General Pepper served as James and Peppy's superior officer and friend. During this time, Peppy married a woman by the name of Vivian, and they spent their honeymoon on Zonus. The two ended up having a daughter named Lucy, though tragedy struck not long after, as Vivian died of illness, devastating both her husband and daughter. James later decided to leave the Cornerian army to start up an independent elite commando unit of mercenaries for hire, and convinced the depressed Peppy to join him in the endeavor, citing it being a way of providing freedom to the Cornerian territories. Thus, the Star Fox mercenary team was born. They started off working on a freelance basis, only accepting missions serving to uphold justice, typically involving providing aid to the Cornerian army in defending Corneria, instead of solely for financial gain. Around this time, 3 key individuals for the future of the franchise were born. First was Falco Lombardi, a member of an avian race. The next was Fox McLeod, the son of James, born on Papatoon, though raised on Corneria. And the final individual was Slippy Toad, the son of the director of engineering of the Space Dynamics Company, Beltino Toad. Peppy, who took a keen interest in Fox, becoming akin to a second father, and James, both provided Fox with valuable teachings to never give up and trust in his own instincts. With these 2 father figures both taking on integral roles in his upbringing, Fox exhibited aerial and ground-based combat skills from an early age. Meanwhile, Slippy was mentored in engineering by Beltino. Skipping forward 9 years, the government of Fichina abandoned their research facility on the planet due to the huge amount of funding it required, along with concerns raised over environmental protection, though sometime later the Corneria Defense Force took over jurisdiction of the site, who converted it into a military intelligence base. Andross, now Chief Science Officer at the Science Institute, found that his scientific areas of expertise in bioengineering and space warps were no longer of any interest to the current Cornerian peace. This caused his ambitions to veer toward terraformation. His first foray into the subject was conducting experiments on a red M-class dwarf star in the hopes of one day seeding life on it. Though Andross's colleagues insisted that life could never exist on a star, the genius scientist eventually succeeded in his endeavor, turning said star into the molten planet of Solar. After this, Andross began construction on a terraforming device, with the intention of next terraforming the uninhabitable world of Venom, despite it having a reputation of being a place of death and destruction. His work on terraformation saw a notable shift in Andross's morality, but a growing lust for power deep within him, along with exposure to his increasingly deadly experiments, caused said morals to twist more and more to the point of becoming demented. Andross's psychological deterioration quickly escalated to insanity, with him developing an evil disregard for public safety. Noticing this, General Pepper continually issued him warnings and suggestions to halt his experiments, but Andross ignored his old friend, not content with letting his work go to waste. Eventually, General Pepper ordered Andross to completely terminate his research, causing frequent infighting between them and forever severing their friendship. But this would not be the end of Andross's ambitions, for the now mad scientist continued his dangerous experimentations in secret. These experiments tragically resulted in most of the Lylat system being reduced to a wasteland of near extinction, and on one occasion, Andross unleashed a secret weapon, annihilating a large section of Corneria's capital, Corneria City, in a massive explosion, resulting in heavy casualties. A small area of Corneria City remained contaminated even after the fallout of this explosion, but due to the Cornerian Defense Force's timely and frantic response, further damage was prevented. General Pepper infuriatedly had his forces place Andross under arrest and seize his laboratory and assets. He then tried his former friend for high treason as a first-class offender, resulting in the general excommunicating Andross from Corneria and sentenced to permanent exile on the barren and desolate Venom, on the far edge of the Lylat system, in fear that he could potentially subvert the entire system to do his bidding if allowed to remain on the planet. Though General Pepper had predicted Andross's exile to Venom to have been a death sentence, the latter was determined to survive at all costs, driven by vengeful madness. Upon his arrival to the planet, he began exploring his new environment, eventually happening across long-abandoned ancient ruins from the legendary Lost Space Tribe, where he unearthed Golomech and reprogrammed it for his own use. Andross also discovered humanoid lizards and fellow monkeys now inhabiting Venom during his trek. Having renounced his ideals of protecting the Lylat system in favor of now choosing to destroy it and replace it with a new galaxy under his own rule, he organized these individuals into a makeshift army. To further this effort, he began conducting experiments on some of these individuals and other species of life forms found on Venom. Among those experimented on was an aquatic fish-like species who he bioengineered into the humanoid Anglar race, immune to the acid seas where they ultimately chose to dwell. As more time passed, Andross began digging a maze of deep tunnels into Venom's interior in preparation for the construction of a palace for himself. A palace befitting a newly self-proclaimed emperor. Elsewhere, a lone winged Aparoid made its way to the Lylat system. The Aparoids, a race of cybernetic insectoids, would many years later become a grave threat to the system. This one, possibly the queen of the species, came across a Cornerian fleet and destroyed it, leaving only a handful of survivors, who alerted the Cornerian army to the Aparoid's existence. Said Cornerian army then readied for further Aparoid aggression, but this never came to pass, leaving them to assume the destruction of the aforementioned fleet to have been an isolated incident. It was around this time that Pigma Dengar, former underling of Andross at the Science Institute, joined the ranks of Star Fox as an expert pilot. He proved himself to be a very cunning addition as he, James, and Peppy traversed the entirety of the Lylat system, pursuing jobs together, settling disputes, and earning overflowing wealth along the way. On Corneria once more, Fox McCloud decided to join the Cornerian Academy to follow in James's footsteps, training to be a fighter pilot, and convinced his childhood friend Bill Gray to join him. After enrolling, the two became acquainted with Falco Lombardi and Slippy Toad, who also enrolled around the same time. It is important to note that Lucy Hare attended the Cornerian Academy too, though it is unknown when, in relation to the others, she did so. Now enter Wolf O'Donnell, future arch-rival of Fox. Wolf climbed his way to become leader of a gang of space pirates wanted by the Cornerian army for crimes including larceny and treason. Eventually, the Cornerian army managed to confront Wolf's gang in Sector Z, leading to a catastrophic battle. The army ended up coming out on top, but Sector Z was left a graveyard of wrecked warships. Equipment left behind in the sector from the battle reacted to the already unstable nature of Sector Z's makeup, causing electromagnetism and the atomic weak force to drastically change in the area. During the years now past since Andross's exile, he acquired numerous individuals into his service, his evil ambition serving as a magnet, attracting the scum of the Lylat system. He molded them into an army of minions expected to willingly give their lives in his name, their new master. While constructing this army, Andross promoted the most powerful and intelligent of his followers to positions of leadership and gave them command of specialized war machines of great power, varying in shape and size. He then dispatched these lieutenants, each accompanied by fleets of support crafts, to seize strategic locations throughout the Lylat system. Using this military might, and now funded by the forces of Venom, Andross officially proclaimed the birth of his Andross Empire. Moving away from Venom, Falco dropped out of the Cornerian Academy to become a rogue pilot. He lived recklessly and had many adventures in this new role, visiting many different worlds, including Zones, which he came to frequent often. Eventually, Falco formed a galactic gang called Free as a Bird, though they sometimes referred to themselves as the Space Hot Rodders. The other members consisted of a robot, an alligator or crocodile, a rat, and 2 cats named Cat Monroe, Falco's childhood acquaintance, and Cool. Cat developed an unrequited crush on Falco over time, though the latter pretended not to notice. Among the team's many adventures, they came into at least one conflict with a ruthless and mysterious chameleon named Leon Pawalski, eventually causing Falco and him to develop a fierce rivalry. Slippy, on the other hand, stayed in the Cornerian Academy, though had his father use his close relationship with Space Dynamics president Yaru Dupont to allow him to utilize his engineering skills in at least a part-time capacity. Slippy and Beltino both invented and constructed many inventions as members of the Research and Development Division for both the Cornerian Defense Force and, on occasion, Star Fox, whose members were acquaintances of the latter. Slippy's personal inventions included advanced energy-firing pistols called blasters, which he created for the Defense Force's use, though later gifted Star Fox with the then latest models. Other inventions of his included personalized, super high-performance combat spacecrafts called R-Wings, specifically created for Star Fox. Speaking of Star Fox, after having obtained the R-Wings, James began seeking an aircraft carrier to transport the team faster and more efficiently, and act as a mobile headquarters large enough to house the personalized ships, complete with a repair facility for them. In addition, James also wanted this new carrier to act in a logistical capacity by transferring supplies to various combat zones when needed. He ended up eventually commissioning the construction of a unique multi-purpose Dreadnought-class mothership under exclusive contract from Space Dynamics. He also commissioned them to create a robotic pilot to bolster Star Fox's ranks. Due to the exorbitant cost, James took out an 80-year low-interest mortgage from a bank to finance it, but used portions of his reward money from Star Fox's past missions to help pay this off. 5 years post-Andross's exile, scientists from the Cornerian Observation Station, possibly the Beltino Orbital Gate orbiting Corneria, began receiving reports of strange bioweaponry activity detected on Venom. When they informed General Pepper about this, the General immediately hired Star Fox to investigate, correctly fearful of Andross's involvement. Pigma, who had by this time become James's next best friend after Peppy, was secretly contacted by Andross, who played upon their shared past to bribe the swine to betray his team with the promise of riches. Pigma's greed overwhelmed his sense of loyalty, and he readily accepted. Though the construction of James's commissioned carrier neared completion, it wasn't ready to be deployed on missions, so Star Fox departed for Venom in their trusty R-Wings instead. As the team entered Venom's atmosphere, Pigma led them into a hopeless ambush with Andross's forces, now including Wolf O'Donnell and his gang of space pirates, whose services Andross had recently purchased. Both James and Peppy's R-Wings were quickly shot down, resulting in them both being taken prisoner. Pigma was then paid the large sum of money promised to him by Andross before departing Venom, leaving his former comrades to their fates. When a moment for escape presented itself, James, possibly too injured from his crash to mount a proper attempt, or it could have been that his R-Wing was too damaged, convinced Peppy to seize the opportunity for himself. His final wish to his best friend was for Fox to one day inherit leadership of Star Fox in his stead. With that, Peppy covertly snuck away to his severely damaged R-Wing, utilizing information about the Androssian ways he had gleaned from his time thus far on Venom to do so. While Peppy managed to fly his R-Wing back to Corneria with his expert pilot skills, despite it lacking an entire wing, James's fate was much less clear. Though Peppy seemed confident that James perished, the circumstances of his supposed death were shrouded in mystery. It is believed that Wolf was involved in James's fate, though whether this means the former killed James, either out of malice or respect-fueled mercy, or aided in an escape, is unknown. Upon touching down on Corneria, Peppy immediately informed General Pepper of James's presumed demise and warned of the growing threat of Andross's new empire. He also revealed Pigma's treachery, leading to the latter becoming branded a criminal by Cornerian authorities for treason. Peppy convinced the general to hold off on publicly revealing James's fate until he had a chance to personally relay the news to Fox. This was his next stop, though Fox refused to believe his father to truly be dead no matter what the official report stated, but still vowed to one day exact vengeance upon Andross and bring the traitorous Pigma to justice in his father's honor. Once the news went public, most Cornerians came to believe that James had either been killed, kept imprisoned, or even brainwashed by Andross, though the most prominent assumption was that the exiled evil genius had personally executed him. While still grieving the loss of James, Fox was informed by Space Dynamics of the completion of his father's commissioned carrier, along with its robotic pilot, Rob-64. Unfortunately, Fox also inherited the debts associated with this commission, but nevertheless named the massive vessel the Great Fox and declared his intention to use it in his bid to avenge James's fate. To this end, he quit the Cornerian Academy in favor of reviving Star Fox. His first order of business was to have Rob-64 hardwired into the Great Fox to become its automatic controller and pilot, thereby obtaining the team's second member. Seeking additional recruits, Fox convinced Slippy to also quit the Academy before completing his pilot training to join this new iteration of Star Fox in the role of inventor and mechanic. Although tempted to also offer a spot on the team to Bill, who he knew would accept if asked, Fox ultimately decided not to pull his best friend into his troubles. Instead, he located the hot-tempered Falco, though the avian somewhat predictively declined the offer. Fox, uncertain about his leadership skills, approached Peppy to become Star Fox's leader instead due to his age and experience, explaining that his vision for the team was for them to finish what the original iteration started in honor of his father. But Peppy refused, insisting that Fox assume the leadership role instead per James's final wish. He did, however, agree to join the new Star Fox's crew, reassuming his role of mere pilot. General Pepper, upon learning of Fox's new iteration of Star Fox, decided to take responsibility for the latter's career, still feeling guilty for having sent James on his doomed final mission and worrying for Fox's future. In this effort, the General deployed Star Fox on many missions as far from Venom as possible to keep Fox safe from harm. During these missions, Peppy began taking a much more active role as a father-like figure to Fox in James's absence. Returning now to Falco, Kat's infatuation with him led her to repeatedly and purposefully place herself into frequent predicaments requiring him to save her. His progressive irritation at this eventually culminated in a falling out with her, during which he quit the Space Hot Rodders altogether, telling Kat that she is a big girl now who can handle problems herself, not needing him to protect her any longer. Reconsidering Fox's previous offer, Falco then accepted the invitation to join Star Fox. Now a complete team, Star Fox continued work as mercenaries for hire, completing hand-picked missions selected by General Pepper. Though they were largely successful in their endeavors, most of the income Fox procured from said missions, like James's own, went toward paying off the massive debt he inherited from the latter. While completing these missions, Star Fox would come to clash with Wolf many times, and despite a shared animosity toward one another, they eventually developed a mutual respect. Also during these missions, it became evident that Slippy's piloting skills were severely lacking due to not completing the pilot training course at the Cornerian Academy, though he showed himself to be a competent wingmate to his fellow comrades whenever they were in need of assistance. As far as his main role on the team as mechanic and inventor, Slippy implemented many mechanical improvements to aid Star Fox, including shield gauges and customized blasters he equipped each member with. In addition, he and his father worked together to create the Landmaster, an armored exploration tank-like vehicle housed aboard the Great Fox for Star Fox's situational usage. As for the two remaining students of note that remained at the Cornerian Academy, Bill and Lucy both eventually graduated, with both subsequently entering the Cornerian Army as pilots. After a time, having earned the title of Ace Pilot, Bill was given command of both the Husky and Bulldog squadrons, which became valued in high esteem by Bill's military superiors. The final past event of note occurred on the planet of Macbeth. It, being a treasure house of raw minerals in the Lylat system, beckoned numerous scientists, miners, and greedy businessmen to flock there in a bid to thrive on the materials, knowledge, and profits found on the planet. Due to this, Macbeth became the center of galactic industry, producing enough wealth to satisfy all who arrived. Unfortunately, a handful of greedy CEOs betrayed the consortium by attempting to buy as many minerals from all across Macbeth as possible with hostile takeovers and leveraged buyouts, which caused massive infighting on the planet. Andross, having noticed the chaotic confusion occurring on Macbeth, invaded, enslaving the inhabitants to mine minerals and manufacture and assemble weapons of war and crafts in his factories and weapons labs to supply his growing army. In this capacity, the inhabitants of Macbeth constructed tripod fighters and even a launch site for interplanetary missiles on the planet for use in Andross's future machinations. A large percentage of Macbeth's famed Burnham wood was ultimately cleared away for use in the weapons factory, supply base, and launch platform now housed on the planet, courtesy of Andross. Eventually, a limited resistance force rose up there to oppose Andross's forces for the liberation of Macbeth.